hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Give My Head podcast with me, Tim McGarry, and my comedy colleagues,
Michael McDowell.
I'm Damon Quinn.
We're delighted to be, we've wailed into our 50th episode, 50-something episode, and we're delighted to say we have a brand new sponsor, ladies and gentlemen. Can you guess who it is from what's sitting on the table? It is the wonderful guys at Hinch Distillery. I'm a very stupid person. I've passed Hinch Distillery many times, and I didn't realise it's called Hinch Distillery because it's near Ballynahinch. That's the type of me. Hinch Distillery, I know very well. Great guys. Make Irish whiskey and gin based just outside Ballynahinch. Began distilling just under 5 years ago in November 2020, and they produce some marvellous whiskies and gins. They've given us some to taste here, and I don't. These are recorded, ladies and gentlemen. These shows are recorded at it's 10:30 in the morning.
It's a bit early, Tim.
Does anybody want a wee whiskey?
I'll try a wee bit.
You
would.
I think it's worth a snifter because these are, by the way, Hinch Distillery run whiskey tasting tours. They run gin tasting tours. I've done that too. Have you done the tour?
Yeah, it's good.
Oh, and they are very, very good. And also they have an opportunity if you want to. What are you laughing at?
A sip, Tim,
A wee sip. This is called, what am I drinking here? I'm drinking the peated single malt, which I would...
I like this is the kind of whiskey
you like it. You're a whiskey fan.
I like my peated whiskey. Yeah,
right.
Very much.
Linda Ervine, what's Irish for whiskey? Ishkaba?
Ishkabaha, the water of life.
The water of life.
Isn't that beautiful?
Okay. You're very good.
Ishkabaha.
That's lovely.
I don't.
That's really nice, actually. It's really good. It's like Christmas. It's lovely.
Oh, that is nice.
Yes, that is. That's very nice.
Okay. This podcast should take a turn, ladies and gentlemen. Hinch Distillery, they do tours. You can go and visit them. You can also buy a cask of whiskey to invest. If you want to, go to hinchdistillery.com. They make a very nice gin. Do you know who brought gin to Ireland, to the United Kingdom? Who made gin very popular? Linda, I thought you'd know this.
I have no idea at all.
King William of Orange.
Oh,
King Billy brought gin to the UK, and when he got the throne in 1689, he loved his gin, was a fan of it, and brought it to the UK, and it became far cheaper to distill. Brandy was the favourite drink at the time, and King Billy popularised gin in the United Kingdom.
I never knew
You
that.
did not know that?
I did
not.
not.
You're learning something new every day.
Isn't that where Dutch courage comes from?
Dutch courage, comes from gin.
For goodness
You see,
sake.
educational this podcast.
Very.
So thank you very much to Hinch Distillery, our the sponsors for this show and the next couple of shows. No. Yes, if that bottle that goes down during the podcast, that's a bad sign.
It is.
We're absolutely delighted to have our very special guest this morning, who is Linda Ervine. People will know you, Linda, because you're indelibly associated with the Irish language. But before we talk about that, Linda Ervine, people go, oh, Linda Ervine, and then they go, David Ervine, da-da-da. But can we talk about you as you're not related to an Ervine? Where are you from, Linda? What's your background? Where are you?
I'm originally from East Belfast, from the Newtonards Road. We then moved to Beaver, and I grew up in Beaver, but always had that very strong link because my grandparents were still there, and I spent a lot of time with them. And then I went back to the Newtonards Road as a teenager.
Right, so you're a good East Belfast woman.
Very much.
Glentoran fan then?
Oh yes, I had an uncle who just adored Glentoran. He never missed a match.
Right. We had David Healy on here a couple of weeks
there
ago.
you go.
Yeah, I do gigs for Linfield, and you don't have to. I'm a Cliftonville fan. They don't care about Cliftonville. They
Tim,
just
I'll have to
Glentoran.
leave now. I'll have to leave.
Oh, you mentioned Glentoran, and that's all you need to do is take the hand out of Glentoran for Linfield fans. They really do. Am I speaking consistently? By the way, I've got to credit. I'm having a bad morning. I'm having a bad morning.
Need some more
Linda,
have some more whiskey.
Linda Ervine said we thought we made a bad joke about it, which we didn't do, by the way. And then
Your name is cleared, Tim. Your name is
my
cleared.
producer then said, I don't speak consistently, so am I okay now, Dan? If you think I'm not doing it properly, you can just shout. Thank you very much. Okay, sorry. So good, solid East Belfast. And am I correct that about you good socialist background?
Yes, my grandparents were members of the Communist Party.
The Communist Party?
Yeah. And then out of 5 sons, well, they kind of all took different directions. The oldest one, Michael, he didn't get involved in anything. In fact, he lived abroad most of his life, though he's back now. My daddy joined the Communist Party. The next one, my Uncle Brian, he joined the British Army. The next one, my Uncle Robert, he joined the UDA. And the next one, my Uncle Barry, he joined the Communist Party. So you can imagine what it was like in the debate in my nanny's kitchen house, like in Thistle
So
Street.
communist,
Lively.
communist UDA men, and well, they didn't quite mix.
Left wing. No, they did. They mixed very well,
Right.
and they were brothers. They
Wow.
were brothers, you know. So there's only two of them left now.
Because it's interesting, because there is a long sort of history of socialism and left wing in loyalism and unionism as well.
Especially at the bottom of Newtonards Road.
Right.
Especially there. And I mean, the stories I was told even about my great-grandfather, who was my nanny. My nanny was born in 45 Thistle Street. My daddy was born in 45 Thistle Street. We were living in Thistle Street when I was born, at the bottom of Newtonards Road. But my nanny's father, he canvassed. Now, I'm not sure whether it was the Northern Ireland Labour Party, the Independent Labour Party, whatever was sort of happening
Oh, it
then.
wouldn't be like the left to have a split, would it?
But he
no.
canvassed for them, and it seems he got a terrible hiding for it and had to hide for a few days up at the plots that used to be at Avenue.
Oh, wow.
So there you go. And my nanny and her sister couldn't go to the Sunday school party because there was so much bad feeling around it.
You come from a good Protestant
Socialist
dissenter
Yeah,
background,
yeah.
Presbyterian.
Yeah, my dad
Your
was
father was involved in the NALP.
NLP, and my grandfather was a communist. That's right.
Oh.
He was at the Somme and was utterly disillusioned. He'd gone with the UVF to fight for
To observe the Sons of
to
Ulster.
Yeah, and came back a convinced
Wow.
Bolshevik.
Right, yeah.
So-
A Bolshevik.
A Bolshevik,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well-
No, Russia could do no wrong. I mean, I had very few conversations with him because I was too young. But Russia was brilliant.
Yeah,
Even-
my family were
yeah.
the same, and we grew up. A lot of the family had been to Russia, and as a child, you know, what I remember was the books of Russia, CCCP,
Yeah.
and my granddad used to take me down to. This was just before the Troubles, so I'd have been about 6, and he was the secretary of the Soviet Friendly Society,
Wow.
and he used to walk me down to the docks to meet the Russian boats coming in, and he used to get Russian chocolate given to me, which was horrible, by the way.
This is where they failed. You see.
They
It's where
did.
we're
It was the
socialist
chocolate
paradise.
where it all went wrong.
You can't make a good
Chocolate communists, you never know when you're sitting beside one, do you?
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. You see, that's what they did. They couldn't make a decent bar of fruit and all.
No, that's where it went wrong. That's where it went wrong.
So that's a big socialist background.
Yeah, trade unionism. My granddad got the gold medal, and it's actually in a
What, a
museum
Russian
somewhere down in Dublin. No, he actually got the Order of Lenin in the
Wow.
1970s.
Oh, right.
Wow.
But then he got the gold medal from the trade unions for his unionist activities.
Order of Lenin's pretty good.
Oh, it is.
So he wasn't put off by 1956 in Hungary and 68 in Czech.
Obviously
Slovakia.
not,
No,
obviously
he
not,
He was
you
a
know.
staunch tanky then.
Yeah,
Is that what they call him?
yeah.
A stamina?
Thank you. Yes, no. Yeah.
So you had this influence then growing
Well,
up. With kind of,
this
you
is
were
it.
always political in your
No,
outlook in
no.
life?
In fact, I wasn't political at all, and it was always just a backdrop. And I suppose as a child, I didn't realise there was anything different about it or strange
Yeah.
about it. When the Troubles were I got a wee bit older, I realised that it was not overly popular round where my nanny and my granda lived, but they got away with it. I think they were well respected. And for me, growing up then, I had no interest in politics. In fact, I was quite sickened by our local politics, so I steered away from it. And my first husband, my ex-husband now, he was from the Newtonards Road as well. His father had been socialist too. So I think we were very much on the same wavelength, where we didn't like, this thing that was coming out sort of saying, this is what we believe, this is what, we think. And,
Yeah.
and I'll have a little story to add is I remember on the Anglo-Irish Agreement.
1985 for younger
It
listeners.
was, yeah. And my youngest daughter...
Sorry, the two producers looking at what? The Anglo-Irish Agreement. Stop that, lads. It's important history. 1985, Anglo-Irish Agreement.
So we lived...
Ulster says no.
We lived in Beachfield Court at the time, which is right on the interface. And I had my youngest daughter, was only a baby, and my ex-husband, my husband then, he couldn't go to work that day, but he took our children up to his brother's house in Ballybean just to get out of the road. And it was like the quietest Sunday you've ever seen. There wasn't a sinner about because they were all over at this big demonstration in the town. And I remember him coming home that night and we watched it on the TV and we kind of rolled our eyes at... because we weren't in agreement, with being against the Anglo-Irish Agreement. But roll on a lot of years and I got divorced and I met my present husband, Brian Ervine, and I was sorting out his house for space for me to move in. And there was a picture of Brian at the Anglo-Irish demonstration with his placard, down with this sort of thing, you know.
Ulster says no.
Absolutely. Well, it still is.
Yeah. So you're about our generation, without getting into detail, because that would be ungentlemanly, but you're about
Absolutely.
our generation. We're 60, born 64, sort of, early
Yeah.
troubles.
I was born at the end of 1961.
Right, okay.
I might look younger than the rest of you,
do.
but that's okay.
I know.
I hate to say, yeah, you do actually. I want to take that as the compliment to which it is intended, by the way. So you famously married Brian Ervine,
Ervine, yeah.
who was the brother of David Ervine, who was very famous as a UVF man, and then leader of the Progressive Unionist Party, very instrumental in the peace process. And then Brian eventually became leader of the Progressive Unionist Party himself at some stage, didn't he? And you were very influenced by that sort of, by Brian and
Yeah, well, I mean, even before I met Brian, one of my uncles was very friendly with David, and my granda and my other uncle would have had a lot of admiration for David. And so the two families kind of knew each other. Probably the first time I met David was when he came to my nanny's funeral when she died. But I didn't know him terribly well before I met Brian. But I voted for him.
Right.
And that was the first time I'd voted for a unionist party, and my ex-husband was the same. We were very supportive of David Ervine because what we heard from the Progressive Unionist Party was something different. It wasn't down with this sort of thing. It was actually, we're all working class, and we all have to kind of work together.
Yeah.
And it was new. It was refreshing. There was something quite exciting about it.
Yeah,
So
well, we met David a few times,
Yeah.
but he could talk.
yeah.
Well, they used to say he swallowed a dictionary.
There's a play. There's a man.
there
Well,
is.
I haven't seen it, but I heard great things
It's
about
very
it. It's
good.
supposed to be coming back, and I hope it is coming
Yeah,
back. The
very good.
performance by, I can't remember the name of the actor. Was going to. Apologies to the name of the
Paul,
actor, but he done
I
a
forget the
superb
second
job.
name. Yeah,
It's real.
it's very,
They
very
call the
good.
man who swallowed a dictionary,
Yeah,
and it's his
yeah.
entire life story.
Yeah,
Basically.
and it has my husband Brian's song in it. So there's a song
Oh,
in
right,
it.
did Brian write a
Leaving
song?
Dalriat. Brian's written a load of songs,
Oh, right.
and he's written plays as well.
Right.
And one of his songs, which is not accredited to him quite often, which does make me quite angry.
Okay.
The Bloody Road to the Somme, and the one that's in the play is Leaving Dalriada, which David, it seems, sang at Stormount one time, and that's why it's in the play. Now, Paul, great actor, but he doesn't have the singing ability of Brian, so there we go.
Well,
Paul Garrett.
Garrett. Garrett.
Paul, apologies.
course.
I heard that it's a superb performance, and I hope it's coming back. I never got to see it because it was always sold out, and the lyric and all over the place. So hopefully it's coming back. We met David a few times. He said, I remember one time he was trying to organise around peace processy time. And he was a fan of Give Me a Head Peace because he watched Give Me a Head Peace, and he said there was some meeting and somebody was being more extreme than somebody else, right? And David banged the table and said to this guy, "Stop being a fucking Uncle Andy, will you?"
He's being an Uncle Andy.
To be an Uncle Andy, he said, "Look,
Yeah.
catch yourself a home," So we thought that was a nice compliment from David. But he was kind of very important in his and Brian was in the party with him at this stage, was he?
Brian was involved in the party, so when I met Brian, now politics was never Brian's thing, and I think he was probably more involved because of David.
Right.
And but I think him and David would have sort of argued about certain points and things, but he was very supportive of his brother, obviously.
Well, again, for younger listeners, David Ervine, very important figure in the peace process, ex-UVF man. He was a convicted UVF man, became leader of the Progressive Unionist Party. He was very important in bringing paramilitaries along in the peace process in 1994 to 98, and very pivotal, and died, sadly, very young, didn't he? He was in his 50s, was he?
53.
Was he 53? God, he was a big figure. Yeah, he was a very important figure. Famous big droopy moustache.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Very good quality moustache. So David and Brian were involved in the PUP, and again, sometimes you're defined by the surname Ervine, but you're a very independent woman in your own right.
Well, I remember speaking at a thing a good lot of years ago, and this interviewer said about how I had been sort of influenced by the Ervine sort of political ethos and whatever, and I had to say, no, sorry. Yeah. I was influenced by my family's political background, and that's where. And I never was a member of the Communist Party. I'm not that left wing, but they had a big impact on me. Ever before I met Brian, ever before I married married Brian, ever before I voted for the PUP, it was my family that had the influence on me.
Mm-hmm. And as a hobby then, did you start taking up the Irish language or something just for a bit of crack, or how did you get involved in the Irish language?
Basically was it. Brian was leader of the PUP at the time. I was teaching. I was an English teacher in Ashfield Girls' School.
Oh, I know. Do you know how I know that?
How do you know?
That man there behind you. You taught his wife.
Oh, Georgia.
Barker.
Oh, yes, I remember her, blonde. Isn't that right?
She would have been.
Oh, well remembered, Linda. Thank God
you got that
There
right.
you go, Linda. Not what? Georgia Barker.
Well, there is a few that I would have been going. No, but I do. Oh, there you
She's
go.
not one of them.
She's not
Say
one.
hello from me. So
You taught English.
So I taught English, and it was just quite a stressful time. And Brian and I would have we were married in East Belfast Mission. Now we're not Methodist ourselves, we're both Presbyterians. But we went
What? Sorry, what? See, that's Protestant thing. What is it with you people? What are you talking about? We're Presbyterians, but we got married in a Methodist church.
You can do that sort of thing. You can just float about,
One true Holy Roman Catholic.
Very flirtatious. Well, I actually now go to a Church of Ireland church, so there you go.
So you're a Presbyterian married in a Methodist church, you go to Church of Ireland. Fine,
absolutely.
No problem. That's okay.
And I have flirted with Elam and all the rest of it, the Pentecostals, so there you go. But,
so you're sorry, I interrupted there. You're married in a Methodist
So
church.
I was linked in with East Belfast Mission. They had a women's group, a cross-community women's group, so it was women from the Short Strand and women from sort of Newton Arch Road and general area. And I just went, it was a girl down the street, Eileen, me and her went together, and I lived behind the mission in Erskine Street. So they did a 6-week taster in the Irish language. And I remember when it was coming up thinking, that would be interesting. Now, I'd never even learned the language in school, so I didn't have the tools to learn a language. But I just thought it was just something interesting about it because I am Irish within a British context. And one of the things that attracted me was whenever we did the sort of wee introduction to it was that they talked about, to say you speak Irish, you say to Gaelic Ogam, I have Irish, there's Irish at me. And I remember thinking, I'd like to be able to say that. So my ambition was to learn a few words.
Right.
But also what I found very interesting at the time was the women from the Short Strand had no interest whatsoever in the language, but were very interested in the royal wedding that was coming up. And what Kate's dress might look like, So there you go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so my mother would have been a very good devout Catholic, a bit of SDLP-ish sort of, but loved the royal wedding. Loved the trooping of the colour.
Well, I have a strong memory. My daddy, my daddy left when I was 7, but when I was 11, I went to live with him, and at that time he was living up in Twinbrook. We lived in these sort of flats, and our next door neighbour was Mrs. McElduff, who was a very strong Republican, and my daddy's wife, became his wife. She was English, and I don't think Mrs. McElduff approved of that at all, But we didn't have a TV. And I remember coming in from school one day, and Mrs. McElduff called me and she said, Linda, do you want to come in and see our princess getting married?
Our princess?
Our princess, and that was Princess Anne. And my dad's going, no, she's not interested. I didn't know who Princess Anne was.
I was 75, I remember they said.
Was it?
I said, yeah, 75.
Come on. or
Was you married twice though?
No, it was earlier. I
No,
think
was
it was
earlier.
earlier.
72, I think.
73.
See how we know this. Royal weddings.
Princess, I remember Princess Anne. Yeah.
Diana was what,
Captain
80?
Lawrence, wasn't it?
Captain Lawrence.
Phillips.
Diana was 81, which where the word
81.
went a bit mental for Diana. Yeah, that's right. So you started learning a few.
So I
Couple of
started
focal,
learning
isn't
a
that the
couple
thing?
of focal after the 6-week taster.
Excuse me.
I know what's
Couple of
that all
people
about.
think that's
It is funny though.
couple of focal means
Couple of words, a
couple
few
of
words.
words. Couple of focal. Don't think it's something rude there. It's all right,
No,
Dan
it's not
Arpit.
rude. Well, I did write a wee comedy sketch that brings that in, and it's about a man called Jimmy. And Jimmy's from the Loyalist community, and his wife Maggie starts learning Irish, and he finds out, and he's not a happy bunny at all. So he gives off, and he starts shouting, and he says to Maggie, "I'll not be speaking any language Jerry Adams speaks." She says, "Well, I think he speaks English." No, says, "That's got nothing to do with it. I don't want to hear a word of Irish in this house." And she says, "Focal." And he said, "Well, now there's no need for that language, Maggie." And she says, "No, Jimmy. Focal is the word for word in Irish."
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to hear fuck all in here.
Yeah.
Well, they used to criticise the Sinn Féiners who spoke Irish, because some of them said they didn't really speak Irish. They spoke Gaelish.
The jail talk.
Because they
People
learned
talk about
the
the
jail
jail
talk.
talk.
That's very good.
Well, I think one
Learned
of the problems in the jail, which I can absolutely understand, is sometimes there were proper teachers, but it was quite often a mix of different dialects,
Yeah.
and people were
Yeah.
hearing different dialects. We're very strong on our Ulster
Right.
dialect, our Gaelic Ulu, because that is our dialect. And we're very strong that our teachers all teach Gaelic Ulu.
You see, this is the problem I have with Irish.
Here we're getting into it now.
Number one, I was taught Irish in St Malachy's only for 1 year, because the Irish teachers had a reputation for not being great and a bit brutal. And I famously said that we had an Irish teacher.
love
If
a story.
you got a question wrong in Irish, you used to put a metal bin in your head and whack it with a hurl.
We don't do that.
And he
didn't
said-
learn it?
And he said he was going to instill a love of the Irish language, and all he instilled in me was tinnitus, right? So as soon as I was able to give it up, I gave it up. But I love languages of Latin, Spanish, A-levels and stuff, so I did love language. But the thing about Irish is it's too hard. It doesn't look like it sounds. There's fadas everywhere. It doesn't look like, and it's quite a tough language to learn. And then when you do learn it, and you could learn Ulster Irish, and people go, Ulster Irish. I've got Connemara Irish, it's different from Kerry Irish, and blah, blah, blah. Because remember, we did a thing, we had a wee bit on Give Me a Headpiece, and we wanted a couple of sentences translated. And I think we give it to 2 or 3 different Irish speakers, and they came back with 2 or 3 completely different versions of what it was, because there was Ulster Irish and Connemara Irish and Donegal Irish. How many versions are there?
Well, there's three main dialects, which is
And are they
Munster.
they're supposedly mutually understandable?
They are mutually understandable. There's some words are different. Some of the grammar can be a wee bit different, the Shevu and the Uru, and some of the pronunciation down in Munster, where they put the emphasis, is different. And that's supposed to be because of the influence of Anglo-French.
Right.
So I'm told. But we know that Gaelic Ulu is the best.
Oh, the purest.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know.
And how do you feel about Ulster Scots then?
I am very interested in Ulster Scots. And here's the interesting thing. When I started learning Irish, I always say this, I had no interest in Ulster Scots. I thought it was a bit of a joke, And it was actually Irish speakers who corrected me and said, "Hold on a wee minute, Linda. You need to look at that. That is a language." So the official line is Scots is a language and Ulster Scots is a dialect of Scots.
Yeah.
But when you look at Ulster Scots, there's loads of Irish words in it. Absolutely loads of Irish words. So though they're 2 separate languages, they overlap. And for us as people in Ulster, we're drawn on both of those traditions, which is lovely. And it doesn't dilute us in any way. I think it enriches us.
Yeah.
So for me, I have the greatest respect for Ulster Scots. Now, unfortunately, Ulster Scots is not in a place like Irish where you could go and, learn it as a language. But there's beautiful words there. There's beautiful phraseology. There's, structure there. A lot of it which is borrowed in from Irish. And some, Irish has borrowed words from Scots as well. So I think it's something fascinating. It's something I have the greatest respect for. And what annoys me is when people slag it off who know nothing at all about it.
Well, you see, we slag it off.
who know nothing at all about it.
No. We genuinely did. I did a program through the Ulster Scots Agency of Tim McGarry's Ulster Scots Journey, where we interviewed some speakers, and then we did a 2-part documentary about the language. It's still available on YouTube, isn't it?
I think so.
Ulster Scots, about the language and about how there was a because you're right. People mock it and they don't really know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
There was a Scots language.
Yeah, and there still is a Scots
language,
language. Still is, yeah.
Lowland Scots, which was spoken by King James and all that
Yeah.
sort of stuff. And then there was a version that came over here, and it has been slightly mocked and derided. But there's value. Basically, our point was, yes, it's not the same place where Irish is. There aren't dictionaries and there aren't grammar and syntax and stuff, but there's a value to it. There's stuff in Ulster Scots that is very I mean, there are about 40 different words to insult you with, beginning with G.
That's right.
If I can remember correctly. But there is some value. And you can look that up, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. What's it called? The Ulster...
Ulster Scots Journey.
Minding Your Language.
Minding Your Language.
Minding Your Language.
Yeah.
2-part documentary. Very good.
Yeah, but I thought the interesting thing about it was the fact that, and this probably touches on some of the stuff we're going to discuss, is that Scots in Scotland is a kind of nationalist thing.
Yes,
a big nationalist
I
thing
find
where
that really interesting.
whereas it's completely different here.
Yeah.
Ulster Scots is a kind of identification, kind of unionist identification.
Yeah.
we
And I
interviewed
don't
Linda-
think that that link is a kind of promoted over here.
No,
I think that needs to be more widely known.
No,
actually.
we interviewed the late Alex Salmond about it, who was a very powerful advocate of the Scots language, which is, a version of which Ulster Scots is a version of, and they're very powerful. He was saying, we need to preserve this, and this is part of our heritage.
I've visited the Outer Hebrides. I went to Lewis and Harris there, and that's Presbyterian mostly. Most of the islands are Presbyterian, not all of them. I think there's one island that's Catholic, and they would be very conservative.
Yes.
And during the referendum, they voted strongly to stay as part of the UK.
Oh yeah.
And that whenever the referendum came, and their what's it called, the outcome of their vote was announced. It was done through Gaelic.
Oh, right.
So which was very, very interesting.
Oh yeah, But I mean, it's actually on the Scottish Parliament. They have English, Gaelic, Scots Gaelic, and Scots. The signs are all in the three languages.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's Scots Gaelic is similar to Irish. Is it mutually understandable? Can you?
I did a module in it as part of my degree in Irish. I found it very difficult, I have to say, but I went over to the Gaelic-speaking places in Scotland a lot of years ago, and I took 2 fluent Irish speakers with me. And after a while, they were able to, get into the way of it. It interested me, the similarities, but also the differences. Now, there is controversy about where Gaelic came from.
Yeah.
Did it come from Ireland, or did Gaelic come up? But
Yeah.
I personally believe it came from us over to them, and then went over to the Isle of Man. So they were, at one time, it was the same language, Gaelic, Gaelg, as it is known in the Isle of Man, and Gaelic here. They're now known as 3 sister languages because they're so closely related. When I went to the Isle of Man, I found the Gaelic there much, much easier to understand. But at the same time, the people I met were second speakers. They weren't native speakers. For the people I met in Scotland were native speakers. So they were very fluent, very fast, Yeah. But it's beautiful. And for me, it's part of the family of Celtic languages. And at one time, Celtic languages were spoken throughout the British Isles, still spoken in Wales and Cornwall. But at one time, England also had a Celtic language. So I always say, for me, the language shows the familial and the linguistic ties between us in these islands.
Well, you mentioned the Dalriada song, but Dalriada was the ancient kingdom of Dalriada. We were all united with the Scots at one stage.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ulster and Scotland, that's a solution. I think that's the solution to the Northern Ireland question.
Get rid of that other bit. I think that's been mentioned before.
Well, I think Ulster and Scotland together.
Yeah, be good.
Dalriada.
I think we'll have to bring in the Isle of Man, though.
Yeah, we're all right. Okay, you want the Isle of Man?
Isle
Okay.
of Man.
Yeah, we need to keep a TT. Yeah, well, absolutely.
Dalriada, that's the way to see off Nigel Farage.
Can I ask you one thing? There's the politics here. Before we get to the politics here of the Irish language, there's some people say, why you're bothering to learn an Irish language, which is, a dead language. There was a famous commentator, A.A. Gill. He was a bit of an English snob, but he was talking about Welsh speakers. And he said, Welsh speakers learn Welsh in order to speak to fewer people. Which is it's quite a funny insult. It's a good insult saying, well, everybody speaks English. Why are you bothering to learn this this language, wasting your time. So if there's an argument about you can speak English perfectly, you can communicate with everybody, why are you bothering learning something that a tiny minority of people are going to learn? You go to Spain or France, we'll learn Spanish or Chinese or something useful. What's your counter argument to that?
Well, I suppose for me, I never set out to learn a language. I'm not even a traveller. I don't like traveller. I went to France once with my husband, Brian, who did do French at school and who told me he could speak French. But when we got there, I realised he could speak English with a French accent. And that is a true story. And
who was the famous Lord Mayor?
I was about to say, yes.
Alban McGuinness. Was it Alban McGuinness?
I think it was.
He's a lawyer, Tim. Just
Lord Mayor of Belfast, and he went to France, and he went to and had a reception in France, and again did exactly that. Instead of speaking French, said thank you very much for having me.
Listen very carefully.
Brad's on the same page. But so as I say, I fell into it accidentally. But when I did start learning Irish, it was that sudden awakening that the language was all around us in our place names. Because nobody ever told me that I was born in Belfast, that I lived down the road from Lisnasharrock or Crochnagun. I didn't know. And I remember then when I started going to classes and people saying to me, have you ever read Rory O'Blaney's and Rory, and the late Rory O'Blaney, who was from here in Hollywood and reared his children through Irish here in Hollywood. So he wrote a book called Presbyterians in the Irish Language. There was Snoddy's Hidden Ulster. There was other things by the Old Trust about, people within the Protestant Unionist community. And when I started to read these things, I was amazed at the links to my own community. And suddenly this language, which I thought was interesting, but I did view it as being Catholic, south of the border, not really connected to me as a Protestant from East Belfast. Suddenly I saw it as, my goodness, this is part of who I am as well. Like the Presbyterian General Assembly in the 1830s called the Irish language our sweet and memorable mother tongue. And I found out about these links to Scotland, and it was just amazing. So it gave me a feeling of ownership. So I think at first then it was maybe the novelty value, the fact that it had been something there that I found interesting. So I did it at first, I suppose, in the way that many Protestants had done it years and years, like that antiquarian. I didn't see it probably very much as a living language, but the more I got into it, the more people I met who spoke Irish, the more relevant I saw it was. And now I know hundreds of people who speak Irish fluently. And I think one of the biggest wake-up calls for me was going into the Irish medium schools. I was able to go into the Gaelic medium schools in Scotland, and the benefits of bilingualism. I was an English teacher in East Belfast. I mean, I came out of school with no education at 16. Well, actually, I was 15 when I came out of school because I was expelled.
I want to hear more about that, but go ahead.
And, my own children, none of my own children left school with any sort of education. And, when I went into teaching, then I went into education as an adult and became a teacher in a school in East Belfast that wouldn't take me when I was a teenager. Then I realised that on some things we did really well and other things we did really, really badly, and particularly in loyalist areas, the low educational achievement and, how sort of social problems and all the rest of it. I'd had children who had difficulties with reading, but when you tried to speak to the parents, those parents had difficulty reading. So, this was a generational thing. And when I then read about the benefits of bilingualism and how this could switch on all these abilities in the brain, I was fascinated by that. And I wanted a bit of that for children in unionist areas. And that's one of the things that has motivated me in opening our school, Scull na Shilta.
I think that is accepted that, if you learn through another... First of all, you can learn a language a lot easier when you're young.
Yeah.
And secondly, there is a huge benefit to your... We don't know how it works. Your brain works in certain ways, but if you're learning through another language,
one of the
interesting
things is when you learn a second language, it improves your literacy in your first language. And as an English teacher, I obviously came across a lot of poor literacy as part of my job with children. And one of the things I remember we introduced a new sort of system in our library which looked at children's ability to read and levelled them. And when we put the children's levels of reading ability, the first year we did it, and we looked at the children's results in all of their exams, now we're talking science, maths, everything, there was a correlation. So the poorer their reading ability was, the poorer they were achieving in all their exams. It wasn't just impacting English or maybe history or something. So, if children were failing reading back in primary school, they were lost, and it was very difficult for us then in post-primary school to try and help those children to catch up. So I don't think that bilingualism is a one-fit-all, But what I have seen over the years is report after report after report being written about the problems within working class areas, but no solutions are coming up. And I'm saying, well, maybe this is one possibility for those parents who want it, and those parents who are choosing to do it.
And so, what were you expelled for?
He timed that well.
Well, now there's a story. I was actually expelled from 3 schools, and I know it's hard. My husband says, because he said, you were such a rebellious teenager, and now you're such an obedient adult. He thinks I'm too obedient. But I started off in Grosvenor, and I wasn't officially expelled. They basically said to my father, "Get her out."
Invited to leave.
Invited to leave, and my father thought that was a good idea. The second school I was expelled from, and this is really shameful, was Newton Breda Secondary School, which is now Breda Academy, and I got into a row with a teacher. I'd had a few drinks at lunchtime.
At lunchtime at school?
Not in school. I went home and had a few drinks, and I think I was about second year at the time. I know. And then the third school I got expelled from was Park Parade. That was the school I went to longest, so I went in there in second year, and I held on until fourth year. And I really got expelled for nothing in that one. I went to the shop to buy a fig, and and didn't come back, and sort of wandered in eventually. And the teacher sent me to Mr. Neely, who was headmaster, and out.
And you ended up a teacher.
And I know, as my mother said, that was because I never used to go to school. I used to mitch off a whole lot, and she used to say to me, "This makes up for all the days you didn't go to school." But the sad thing, when I did go into Ashfield, and I was very happy there. I taught for 9 years. I realised when I went into study, when I did GCSEs and I did A-levels and then I went to university, that there were massive, massive gaps in my educational background, because after primary school, I never really went to school. So I didn't do history, and I didn't do geography, and I didn't. So the only things I kind of knew about history and geography were they touched on the literature that I'd studied then post, at college
I am
and things.
shocked, though, that you, drank during the day. Do you know what I mean? I don't know how you... Cheers.
It's ridiculous. Yeah. Do you want a wee hint? So to touch on the bilingual, I hate to get controversial, but the Irish language has been politicised to a very large extent. There are certain people who, as a Protestant, you put your head above the parapet. There are people going, you're learning Irish language, even talking about Irish language makes you a Lundy, makes you betraying your Protestant Unionist heritage. You've had a lot of flack, shall we say? Is that?
I have from time to time. I've also had flack from people who've ended up getting on board and coming and joining us, which is sort of interesting as well. And I think sometimes some of the people who have the strongest views are the people who know least about the subject, and I find that interesting. I remember giving a talk. I was invited to a particular church in East Belfast, and it was pensioners. And one elderly woman had to be escorted out. She got so angry. Honestly, it was quite amusing. And also at another time I was invited to Rathcoole, and it was a women's group. They hadn't been told why I was there. And just in the middle of the group, but just in my eye sort of view, there was one woman who was really angry when I used to do a talk called The Hidden History of Protestants in the Irish Language, and she was raging. And as I talked and, disclosed facts, and I try to be lighthearted when I talk to things, so other people were kind of laughing, and, her wee head was, to see other people's reaction, but she was really angry. And then at the end, she was the first one on her feet to ask me, could she join my classes, you know? So sometimes it was as dramatic as that, where you could watch change
The
happen.
Lord Mayor's chain, isn't it? Irish?
It is indeed, Erin Gabrach. It's all around us, but I think one of the things that I found interesting, and when I started to learn, and I suppose one of the things that started me in my journey of, you know, the work I do, was when I discovered all these things like the Presbyterians and the place names and, you know, the fact that it's in our everyday words and the structures of our speech, and that, why was I never allowed to know that?
Yeah, but language can be divisive. I mean, I read a story, now I don't know if it's true, but it'd be good if it was true, that when the Virgin Mary appeared at Lourdes to Bernadette, the bishops came down from Paris, and the first question they asked her was, what language did she speak? And she said, Occitan, because that was her French dialect.
Right.
And the bishops were absolutely outraged that the Virgin Mary would come the whole way to France and not speak proper French.
There you go.
Insulted.
I'm not sure about the validity of that story, but
No, well, you see, it is interesting because the Irish language, yes, is now associated with nationalism, republicanism, and you know, very few Protestants speak it. But then you find the history of the Irish language. The Catholic Church were discouraging it for a long period of time, going English is the main language.
Yeah,
English
yeah.
is the language that gets you going ahead. Don't be speaking that useless dialect.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to get ahead in life, you need to
Yeah.
learn English,
Well,
and that contributed to the decline.
100%. And I think one of the, and it not only happened here in Ireland, but happened in Scotland and Wales.
Well, same as Ulster Scots, because a lot of Ulster Scots
Yeah.
people tell you it's seen as working class, it's
Yeah,
seen as rural,
yeah.
it's seen as
Well,
kind of looked down upon.
English was seen as education, it was seen as modernity, it was seen as the way ahead, and people needed English then to get ahead. So the sort of minority language, their local language, was discouraged. Now we're in a different place now, and we have more value of it. One of the things I think is most interesting is when you go back, and people who were very educated a few hundred years ago, one of the things, they believed things like, women weren't as clever because their brains were smaller. Well, yeah, they are, but it's nothing to do with intelligence. But they also believed genuinely that if you had more than one language, then that could cause in children schizophrenia, depression. So, do not let your child, speak Welsh or whatever, focus on English. But the same people who were telling that to, people, poor people, working class people, were also having their children educated in Latin and French, and, So it's kind of interesting how those rules can be sort of moved and, when you don't appreciate something. And again, I think we're in a better place now when we have more appreciation of local languages, local history, and the value of local culture. And I always look at people who come here, people, immigrants, particularly, I felt this when I was still teaching a lot of Polish people, that when people come here, come to UK or whatever, they need to integrate. So they need good English, they need to be working, they want to feel part of this place. But it's important that they hold on to their own culture and their own language, and sometimes they don't. I have a friend, her mother was Dutch, and she came here just after the Second World War, married a man from here. Now, she gave all her children Dutch names, but she never let any of them learn Dutch because it was so hard for her to integrate, and she felt a foreigner. She didn't feel that her English was good enough. She felt that she had this accent, and she didn't want her children to suffer in the same way. So I think that's interesting.
That's changed quite a bit, though. I mean, you go in supermarkets and you see the Polish kids talking Polish now.
And I hope you do. I hope you do. I remember in school when I was still teaching. One of the girls in my class who was Polish, and her English was good, but she knew she wasn't local. And I remember her mum coming up, and her mum had good English as well, but a very heavy Polish accent, and English just wasn't as natural to her. And then the wee brother was playing about on the floor with a Belfast accent,
Okay.
So you set up, you've got Irish language classes in East Belfast, and what's the centre called? The
Skenos Centre. So I work for East Belfast Mission, so they're a Methodist church based in the Skenos Centre on the Newtonards Road.
So that's who you work for, the Methodist church? Is it?
I do.
Right. And you have Irish language classes there, and then you're involved in this, the huge controversy recently has been this nursery in East Belfast.
Well, it's now a school.
Certain people have objected to in vociferous terms, and when you see the Irish language, you go, oh, for God's sake, your heart sinks when you go, we're having a row in Northern Ireland about, bilingual signs in a bus station, or a train station. Does that depress you? Does it get you down?
It does depress me because you just think, oh, for goodness sake, there's so many other things to be annoyed about and worried about. And one of the things I would say to people, and I don't get into the rows about 15% and signage and all because it's not my row and I've other things to be doing. But one of the things I would say to people is, look, they're not Irish language signs, they are bilingual signs. And if I went somewhere and I saw a sign in English with a language that I didn't understand under it, above it, wherever beside it, I would ignore the bit that I couldn't understand and focus on the English. And all Irish speakers are asking for is not to remove those English. If they're going to remove all those English signs, we'd have a problem. They're asking for a shared space on a sign. And I don't think that is really unreasonable. So I would just say to people, if you don't like it, if it doesn't represent who you are, just ignore it.
Yeah, you're getting too upset about it.
Yeah.
But people argue. I mean, the argument is that the Irish language has been associated with republicanism, and Jerry always tries to speak a bit of Irish. And they were in the past, we did a documentary on the Gaelic League and their association with the Irish language being Republican, and Patrick Pearse and all those people promoted the Irish language as a political act as well as loving the language. Can you escape that in any shape or form, or do you always have to go, you don't have to be a Republican or a nationalist to like the Irish language?
Yeah. Well, I feel at the start of my journey when I created the Hidden History of Protestants in the Irish language, and I've journeyed very much with this as well, that I was showing, well, actually, yes, this exists, and I'm not going to be in denial of that part of the language's history, but obviously there's a lot more, and it is, for me, it's a small slice of a much bigger cake. And I introduced then, the sort of Protestant history, I suppose in a way of saying, this is why I'm learning it, this is part of who I am. But I feel now I don't even need to do that. Why should I be saying, this is who I am? I love the language. The language belongs to everybody. And one of the things I feel very strongly about is the language does not belong to one side of the community, does not belong to one political outlook. I don't see many people from within that community who claim it does. But I can see during the Troubles that became representative of a certain thing.
Statements in Irish and all
but
that.
I think we've moved on a long way since that. I think there are some people, unfortunately, who are still living in the 1980s. But I think most people realise, no, actually, that's not where the language is, and that's not where Northern Ireland is. So for me, what I'm trying to do is not create the Protestant side of the Irish language, because I'm not interested in that either. I'm trying to say that the language belongs to everybody, and it does.
Well, like I say, the trouble is it's too difficult. I mean, it is. If you like it, it's disturbing. But I do like the fact is there an easier version?
Is there an easier version? No. One of the things I realised when I started learning was that actually I'm not very good at learning a language. Right. That was a problem. But I did like it, and my ambition at the beginning was just to learn a few words, so that was fine. But I just kept going, and it's like anything else. If you just keep going, you can't help but learn it. I now have a degree in Irish. I wouldn't call myself fluent, but, I Tanarch Gaelic Agam, I have a lot of Irish now. I'm able to have conversations in Irish. I'm able to understand Irish. I still struggle. But I just keep learning it, and I teach it as well. I teach it at sort of a beginner's level, and I encourage my learners by saying that I'm not a good language learner. And one of the things you have to do when you're learning the language is you have to open yourself up for humiliation, saying, oh, I got it wrong again. But it just comes, it's like anything else. If you put your heart into it, it will come.
Down south, a lot of people would say, because it became state policy, you had to speak Irish to be a civil servant, and in the courts and jobs and stuff like that, and it was compulsory in the schools, and they said that put a lot of people off, and they hated it because they had to do it. But if you enjoy it, then it's there for you, whether you don't have to do it, but if you like it, you like it, and if you don't like it, you
well,
don't
there
like
was a survey done a number of years ago by Forest na Gaelica, talking about sort of why people learned Irish, or attitudes towards the Irish language, and a lot of people in the south talked about qualifications and jobs. but people in Northern Ireland talked about love, gra, which is very different. So I would not be for compulsion. But I am for accessibility, and I personally
Will you tell Jimmy Bryson it's not compulsory? You don't have to learn it, mate. It's there for you if you want, but it's don't have to learn it.
I feel there's not enough. I feel it's not accessible enough to people in the unionist community. And what we're saying, I mean, we have just signed up people now for our new classes started there a few weeks ago. 720 people.
Wow.
Now, they wouldn't be all from the Protestant community, but the majority of our learners do come from the PUL community.
Right.
And, so there's a massive interest in it, a massive interest.
Okay. And are you going to be the new Irish Language Commissioner?
Absolutely not. We
Absolutely
not.
Not.
We have the new Irish Language. We have Paul Deeds.
Oh, right.
So we have, yeah.
Apologies to Paul.
Who's a very good candidate, yeah.
We were talking beforehand about, because we've interviewed actors and writers, politicians, particularly female politicians, get a lot of crap online. You get a bit of stick, don't you? I mean, does that worry you? Does it annoy you? Can you rise above it, or do you?
Certain things. I mean, I've got used to it. I remember at the very beginning, when I started the job 13 years ago, I didn't even do social media then. And other people were showing me, look what they're saying about you on Facebook. I was really shocked. I said to my husband, Brian, and he said to me, Linda, don't be taking it personally. I says, well, it's about me, Brian. It's hard not to. And he said, toughen up,
Oh.
So I thought, right, okay. And he was right. And over the years, I got used to it. And another thing that Brian did with me was, if I wrote anything nasty back, he said, no, knock that off.
Yeah.
Don't do that, because that doesn't win you any friends.
No point.
And I was also, realised that it's not the person that you're debating with, because you might never change their mind. But lots of other people are watching and they see how you behave.
Yeah.
So, you would get private messages saying, I'm not really interested in the Irish language, but I can see how you're being treated unfairly there, and I can see how they're just, twisting and turning. And actually, I like what you're saying. So I'm very aware of that. So don't always get it right, I have to say, but I try to be factual. I try to be fair. I try not to score points. And what I do is I invite people in for a cup of tea. If you have an issue with me, if you have an issue with what I do, would you come in and I'll put the teapot on and we'll actually have to talk about it. Because very few people have the guts to actually face you, and I'm not scary. I'm 5'1", and in fact, might be 5'1.5". That half inch could make all the difference, And I'm not a scary person, but I can argue my corner in, look, this is what I do. It's very transparent. Here's who I'm about. And what I'm not interested in doing is I'm not interested in saying, now look, we're the nice speakers. It's them ones over there. They're the problem.
Yeah.
Because that is the road to no town. Here's what we believe. Here's who, and we're very mixed. I couldn't say represent everybody's views who go to my classes, because they're a very diverse group of people. So I think that's really, really important.
All right. Linda, thank you very much. We that kind of flew. I did that was nearly an hour there. My Irish language is pretty poor. Shine means that's it.
Shine. Shine well.
Ishkabaha.
Ishkabaha.
Dora Mayoga to Hinch, our sponsors.
Can I just add Balnahinch just when you said it? So Balnahinch, other Irish language name, Balnahincha. So it means the townland of the water meadow. Townland of the island meadow. So it seems at one time it used to flood,
right, and
the meadows would have been like an island.
Right. So Ballia is townland.
Yeah. So Na is of the, and then Insha becomes, that's the island.
There you go. Island of the
it's sort of island of the sort of meadow island. So it's not a real island. It's like an island when it floods. So there you go.
You see, you learn something. This is very educational. Guramila Mayogat. Thank you very much to Linda Ervine. Thank you very much to our sponsors, Hinch Distillery. We will see you very soon. And thank you. See you next time. Thank you.
Thank
you, Linda.